Lecture 11, Cost of Production. The graphing for the next test is going to get a little more difficult than what you were used to in the beginning of this class. Are there any questions? Again, I can't tell you how difficult the graphing is going to get if you're not very good at math. Best of luck for exam 2. I'm a business owner, and as a business owner, do I want my cost high or do I want my cost low? Quite obviously, I want to drive my costs down so I can try to increase my profits. The problem is with my employees, they want to drive my costs up. They want more pay, better fringe benefits, and so forth. And there's this inherent fight that goes on between the employer and the employee. They want more, and the employer is trying to drive his or her costs down. I learned about cost by living on a farm in Illinois, about 60 miles outside of Chicago. My dad was a corn farmer. And as you well know, farmers have large families. Do you think that a farmer wants boys or girls? Good. They want boys. The reason that they want boys is the boys could work the land. At least that's how it used to be. And so here's my mom and dad, and my dad was a producer, if you know what I mean. My mom was the factory. Here's our family. And the first child that my mom and dad had was a girl, my sister Candy. That made my dad a little depressed. He wanted boys. So sure enough, he kept on producing, and the factory kept pumping out children. And the next one was Rick. He's the oldest boy in the group. Then there was Rob, then me, then Mike, then Mark, then Scott. My dad was happier than a pig and you know what. He was just happy because he was producing boys. And then the end came my sister Sherry. That's when my parents decided to quit. This is where I learned about cost. Have you ever heard the term exploitation of labor? This is where I heard about cost because my dad was able to get all of these boys to work on the farm and at a low price. He would feed us at the dinner table. Farmers like to have boys during this period of time. My dad grew corn in Illinois, and there were some good years. My dad was very prosperous. In fact, in a lot of farming communities, during the good times, the richest people in town are the farmers, even though they'll complain that they're the poorest people around. But they have a nice fixed cost of land that they could sell later. Anyway, times went along well. My dad was able to provide for the family until a few summers went by where Illinois didn't get much rain, and my dad didn't have enough money to pay the bills, let alone feed the family. He filed for bankruptcy. We moved to Kansas, where his brother was a farmer. He was a lettuce farmer in Kansas. But when we moved the family in January and my brother and my dad in Kansas were deciding on whether to plant wheat or another crop, they decided to plant lettuce in Kansas. I have to tell you, they were the best lettuce farmers in Kansas. You know why? Because they were the only lettuce farmers in Kansas. They sat down at the kitchen table in January to decide which crop they were going to produce. Wheat, which was produced throughout Kansas, or lettuce, and they decided to plant lettuce. Let me tell you how they figured this out. Lettuce was selling for $5 per crate on the world market, so my dad and his brother decided to get into lettuce farming. That's the revenue that they were going to bring in per crate. The next thing they had to figure out was what was it going to cost them to produce that crate of lettuce. They figured it would take them $1 per crate to plant and grow the lettuce. Why was it so inexpensive for them to plant and grow the lettuce? Good, cheap labor. This is where I learned about the term exploitation of labor. They figured it would cost them $1 per crate to pull the lettuce, to crate the lettuce, and to ship the lettuce. After doing their figuring, they figured that they would be making $3 per crate of lettuce. Pretty good rate of return on your investment. Sure enough, in March, we planted and watched the lettuce grow through the summer. But it came time for the week of harvest. And at the week of harvest, the world price of lettuce had dropped from, in January it was selling for $5 per crate. It dropped to $1.75 a crate. Now this came time when we were talking about pulling the lettuce, crating, and shipping it. What should my dad and his brother do? Should they pull it, crate it, and ship it, or should they wait? And if you said wait, have you ever waited on lettuce when it's sitting in a refrigerator? It turns what? Some of you said brown. Well, you don't wait long enough. It'll turn furry if you wait long enough. So what should my dad and his brother do? Should they pull, crate, and ship the lettuce, or leave it in the field to rot? Go ahead, think about it. For those of you who said that my dad and his brother should pull it, crate it, and ship it, you are correct. Why? Because it's better to lose 25 cents a crate than it is to lose $1 a crate. If they pull it, crate it, and ship it, they're going to receive $1.75 per crate. It costs them $1 to plant and grow it, plus another $1 to pull it, crate it, and ship it, so they would be losing 25 cents per crate. But if they just left it in the field to die, they would be losing $1 a crate, not $2 a crate. Remember, if they leave it in the field to die, then they don't spend that additional $1 to pull it, crate it, and ship it. So which dollar is my dad and his brother concerned with? Dollar number 1 or dollar number 2? Their only concern is about dollar number 2 and only dollar number 2. Why? There's nothing they can do about dollar number 1. They've already planted and grew the lettuce. The only dollar they're concerned about is dollar number 2. Dollar number 1 is sunk, done, and over with. Can my dad and his brother ever get that dollar back? No. So let's look at this term, and if you would, triple star it. I believe it's one of the most important terms in economics, and that is sunk costs. Sunk costs are those costs that are sunk, done, and over with. There's nothing you can do about them. They are irrelevant to your current decision-making process. Write that definition down. Sunk costs are those costs that are sunk, done, and over with. There is nothing you can do about them. They are irrelevant to your current decision-making process. Triple star this definition. Then add to it, all fixed costs are sunk costs. Again, as a business owner, all fixed costs are sunk costs. But that doesn't mean that variable costs can't be sunk costs. It's just that all the fixed costs are sunk costs, and we'll get to that later in our discussion about costs. Let's look at some examples of some sunk costs that businesses have had here in Tucson. Throughout Tucson, we had dealerships that would sit on the corners throughout Tucson. For instance, this dealership was Tom Watson Chevrolet. Sat on the corner of 22nd Street and Park, right on this corner. And they moved to the auto mall. So let me just draw a picture of the auto mall on the other side of town, over by the Tucson shopping mall. Holmes Tuttle Ford, that sat on the corner of Broadway and Euclid. Right here. We had dealerships all over and sitting on the major intersections throughout Tucson, and what they did is they packed up their shop and moved their business over to the auto mall. While they moved their business, they had to still sell the properties around town, which took them some time. Why would they do something like that? Why would they pay on this property? They're already making payments. Why would they go ahead and make more payments over here? In other words, their fixed costs changed. They went up. Why would they do something like that? What's the reason that businesses get into business? Are businesses in business to make a profit? Yes or no? And the answer is no. Businesses are not in business to make a profit. Businesses are in business to maximize their profits. And these businesses knew that if they stuck out at these corners and a lot of the other auto dealerships went over here to the mall, then they would be out of business over here. Again, this fixed cost of this land and this building is a sunk cost. It's irrelevant to the current decision-making process of the auto dealers. Their job is to maximize profit. So if they have to incur another fixed cost expense and a rather large one to build a facility over here, still be making payments here and here. This land sat vacant for several years in Tucson, but now it's being used as an apartment complex. Somebody bought the property and it's being used as an apartment complex. Jack Conrad put a driving range on Roller Coaster Road. Let me describe Roller Coaster Road to you. Roller Coaster Road in Tucson is a very windy road, and I'm going to talk about between La Cañada and La Cholla. And he put the driving range on Roller Coaster Road. So he bought up all of this property right here to build this driving range. He puts in a parking lot. Is that a fixed cost or a variable cost? That's a fixed cost. It's sunk into the land. He builds a house here to sell golf balls, baskets of balls so people can use to drive the golf balls. Fixed cost or variable cost? It's a fixed cost. He plants some grass, which is fixed into the ground, so it's a fixed cost, but then he has to mow it, which varies with the seasons, and so he puts in a putting green. So he has a lot of expense into this business so people can take their golf balls and drive them this way. And the business was fairly successful for many years. The reason he built this business on Roller Coaster Road is you had River Road that ended here at La Cañada. But he knew at some point that the government would extend River Road beyond La Cholla and head up towards I-10 over by Orange Grove. He took his business that was on Roller Coaster Road and he built a parking lot on River Road. He put in a house over here so that he could sell golf balls. Put in a putting green. Put in some new grass here so people can take their golf clubs and hit golf balls this way. He shut down the operation then on Roller Coaster Road up here and created the same operation here on River Road. Now, why would you start another operation here when you had the operation over here on River Road? Again, what is a business owner in business to do? The business owner is in business to maximize profits. And this then becomes a sunk cost. It's irrelevant to his current decision-making process. He knew that a lot more traffic would be traveling along River Road, which would increase the revenue at his business compared to the revenue that he was receiving on Roller Coaster Road. So he takes his business off of Roller Coaster Road and moves it to River Road, the road more traveled. He puts in another fixed cost of lights. Why do you think he put in lights? Well, a lot of people aren't playing golf during the day. They get done with work and they want to practice, so they go practice underneath the lights. This was going to extend the time period in which people could hit their golf balls, and he felt that he would bring in much more revenue than what it would cost him as this fixed cost of the light and then the variable cost of running the electricity from dusk to about 9 o'clock at night. So remember, when you're a business owner, you're in business to maximize your profits. You would think that he built this driving range. You could see the old house from over on Roller Coaster Road. You would think he built this driving range as an income producing property, which he did. He had a piece of land that was on the outskirts of town, wanted to make some revenue off this land to pay the mortgage payment, and he cut out a very good living. But really what he was looking at was not really the driving range business, even though he had a passion for this. He was a professional golf instructor from Illinois, but he bought this plot of land because he knew that the value of this land would increase as Tucson grew. Sure enough, he took this plot of land, and instead of it being now a driving range, he sold it to a builder of a subdivision and more than doubled his money on the property. So he had the business as a driving range, bringing in income to pay for the property, and then doubled his money when he sold it to a builder who was building the subdivision on that property. Very, very good decision-making process, an understanding of sunk costs, and moving forward with the business model. So this is what the driving range looks like today. In economics, we talk about these two terms, short run versus the long run. And most of the time when we talk about production costs, we're in the short run. When we get to the long run, I will always mention in the long run. If I don't mention in the long run, then please realize that we're only talking about the short run. Let's look at what the short run is. Please write this in your notebooks. The short run is where there is at least one fixed cost and at least one variable cost. Again, the short run is where there is at least one fixed cost and at least one variable cost. The long run is when all costs are variable costs. So if fixed costs change, then that means that the fixed cost varied. For instance, in the two previous situations where the dealership and Jack Conrad, the driving range owner, moved their business from one place to another place, their fixed cost went up. That means that their fixed cost changed. That then was a long-run decision. Let's simplify this short-run definition. To make a decision in the short run, what you're doing is you're making a rate decision. I've come up with this. It just makes it simpler to understand the short run. And in the long run, I call this a capacity decision. Let me give you an example. Let's say this is the size of your factory, and you're running a day shift, and we'll say that the day shift goes from 8 to 4 p.m. And so the workers are in the factory, so you have workers in this factory, and they're working on machines. When you look at this factory, the factory is not operating at capacity. It's only running a day shift. Let's say that this happens in the market, that here's the market for your product and demand increases for your product in the marketplace. You know you now can sell more items at higher prices than before. What you're going to do is expand your production. If you expand your production, is this a short-run decision or a long-run decision? The answer is it's a short-run decision. You're not going to build another factory because this is what's happening in the market. What you'll do, instead of running a day shift, you'll now run a swing shift from 4 until 12 midnight. As you run another shift, are you utilizing the factory much better than just having a day shift? And the answer is yes. Let's say that demand keeps picking up for your product in the marketplace, driving your price up, and you better start producing more units in the marketplace. Do you increase your rate of production or do you increase your capacity size of your factory at this point? The answer is rather simple. You make a short run decision. You run a night shift. Your factory now is going to be running 24/7, 365. So you run a night shift. And now your factory is operating near capacity. You try to keep making rate decisions or short run decisions until you reach your capacity. Because if this happens in the marketplace where demand picks up even more and you're operating around the clock and every once in a while have to shut down to upgrade your, work on your equipment that's starting to fail or oil it or change belts or do different things, that you are now having to make a capacity decision as the demand keeps on increasing. Your capacity decision then is a long run decision. You have your fixed cost here of your plant and your equipment. What you will have to do is this. Once demand has increased, you're going to have to increase either the size of your factory and buy more equipment, which then becomes a long run decision because your fixed cost of the factory and the equipment now, that cost has changed. And if there's a change in that cost, then that cost, which was a fixed cost change, that becomes a long run decision or a capacity decision. If I'm talking about the long run, I will say in the long run.